You wake up one morning and realize the dream you fought for is finally yours. The title, the recognition, the respect you once thought would be enough to fill every hollow place inside you, and yet staring back at you in the mirror is someone you barely recognize. The lines around your eyes tell a story you stopped listening to years ago. The weight in your chest isn't pride. It's something heavier, something quieter, something closer to regret. You were told this was what success looked like. You believed them. You believed that the climb would heal you, that the victories would complete you, that once you stood at the summit, the ache would finally leave your bones. But here's the truth no one dares to say aloud. Winning the world means nothing if you lose yourself along the way. Power doesn't crash into your life like a wave. It drips slow and insidious like water wearing down stone. It doesn't demand, it seduces. It doesn't ask for your soul all at once. It convinces you to trade it one small piece at a time. Carl Jung warned that the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. The danger isn't in wanting to build. It isn't in wanting to lead. It's in believing that because your intentions started pure, your actions will stay that way forever. It's in believing that ambition cannot be corrupted. Because ambition, left unchecked, does not simply fuel greatness. It awakens the parts of you you swore you'd never become. And those parts don't announce themselves with horns and chaos. They smile, they flatter, they tell you what you want to hear. They whisper, you deserve this, you're special, you're chosen. They whisper until you forget you ever needed to question them at all. The question isn't whether you will rise, it's what you are willing to sacrifice to stay there. And the tragedy is you won't even notice the trade. Not until it's too late, not until the man standing at the summit realizes the echo in his chest isn't triumph, it's silence. At first, the mask feels like a gift, a way to navigate a world that demands certainty even when you carry doubts, a way to lead without revealing the fear coiled tight beneath your ribs. You tell yourself it's harmless, that the mask is armor, that the mask is necessary. You tell yourself that one day when the work is done, when the battles are won, you'll take it off and go home whole. But masks, once worn too long, have a way of becoming skin. Jung called it the persona, the constructed self, the social face we show to the world. Without it, we would be too raw, too fragile to move among others. But when you begin to believe you are the mask, when the applause starts sounding like proof that you must never change, never question, never pause, that's when the erosion begins. It doesn't come like a landslide. It comes like a slow, unseen drift. You start choosing appearances over truth. You start choosing admiration over authenticity. You start choosing certainty over curiosity. And you tell yourself you are doing it for them, for the mission, for the team. But somewhere in the spaces between meetings and speeches and victories, a small voice begins to ask, when was the last time you told the truth without rehearsing it first? At first you silence it. You drown it in noise and schedules and performance, but it waits. It waits while you polish the next speech. It waits while you collect the next award. It waits while you stand in rooms full of people who admire you and who no longer know you. And then one day, when the crowd has thinned and the lights have dimmed, you hear it again, not as an accusation, as a question. Who are you without them? Who are you without the mask? It doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with certainty, the quiet conviction that because you have risen so far, your instincts must always be right. The belief that your success is proof, that your judgment is infallible, that anyone who disagrees simply doesn't see as clearly as you do. It starts with a single, silent compromise. Trust the crown, not the conscience. At first, the changes are too small to notice. You interrupt more. You listen less. You brush aside objections faster. You tell yourself it's decisiveness, it's leadership. But beneath the surface, the old boundaries, the ones that kept you human, begin to erode. Carl Jung warned that the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge do not vanish. They grow stronger in the dark, fueled by every moment of denial. What we do not confront within ourselves, we eventually act out upon others. And power is the perfect soil for that corruption to bloom. You don't wake up one morning a tyrant. You wake up slightly less kind, slightly less patient, slightly more entitled to having your way, slightly more willing to silence anyone who threatens your story about yourself. History remembers Croesus, king of Lydia, as a man who believed in his invincibility. The oracle told him, if you go to war, you will destroy a great empire. Croesus believed it was his enemy's empire. He believed because he wanted to believe, and in that certainty, he destroyed himself. The great empires, the great companies, the great leaders, they rarely fall because of external enemies. They fall because they stop questioning themselves. Because the shadow, once hidden and denied, steps forward and claims the throne, and no one sees it happen. Because the mask still smiles. Because the empire still shines. Because those who remain are too afraid or too invested to speak the truth, and so you drift further. You lose the ability to distinguish between loyalty and fear, between wisdom and control, between vision and vanity. You justify the losses. You dismiss the doubts. You cling to the image because to question it now would mean questioning everything. And somewhere deep inside, the man you were, the man who once dreamed not of ruling but of building, whispers a warning you no longer hear. Be careful. You are becoming the very thing you once vowed to defeat, Zion. Collapse never looks like collapse when you're inside it. It looks like winning. It looks like promotions, headlines, standing ovations. It looks like a world that keeps saying yes, even as your soul begins to scream no. Modern psychology has a word for it. Disinhibition. The slow decay of the internal restraints that once kept your ego in check. Power doesn't corrupt all at once. It frees you from accountability, one small decision at a time. You start believing that because you can, you should. You start believing that questioning yourself is weakness. You start mistaking silence around you for agreement within them. And slowly, what once made you careful, what once made you human, dissolves. The studies are clear. As people gain power, their empathy shrinks, their ability to take another's perspective withers. Their willingness to rationalize harm in the name of the greater good increases. But you don't need a study to feel it. You feel it when the rooms get quieter when you speak. You feel it when decisions that would have once kept you awake at night now barely ripple across your conscience. You feel it when success tastes less like joy and more like ash. There was a man once, a CEO, who built an empire worth hundreds of millions. On the day he retired, they threw him a celebration, speeches, champagne, standing ovations. That night he sat alone in his penthouse, staring out over the glittering skyline he once thought would be his reward. And he cried, not because he had lost, but because he realized he had spent his life being admired by people who never truly loved him, and had spent so long performing a role that he no longer remembered how to be loved at all. Power gives you the world, and then it takes your world away. And the most tragic part is you won't realize the cost until you are standing in the ruins of everything you thought would make you whole. Not because someone tore it down, because you built it that way, because somewhere you stopped leading and started clinging. And in clinging to power, you lost the one thing it was supposed to protect, yourself. There comes a moment when the mask no longer fits. You can feel it in the quiet spaces, in the late nights, when the noise of the world falls away and you're left alone with yourself. You can feel it in the hollow victories, the applause that no longer reaches your heart, the celebrations that feel more like performances than joy. You keep wearing the mask because you believe you have no choice, because you believe that to take it off now would unravel everything you've built. The image, the influence, the illusion that you are always certain, always strong, always enough. But somewhere deep inside, you know the mask is no longer protecting you, it is burying you. Carl Jung taught that the persona, the face we show to the world, must be broken if we are to find wholeness. Not shattered by violence, but surrendered by courage, because a man who lives only through his mask is not alive. He is a reflection, a shadow, a ghost trapped in a role he cannot leave, and the longer you stay hidden behind the mask, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before it. You begin to fear the very things that once made you human: vulnerability, doubt, tenderness. You begin to see them as threats instead of truths, and so you harden. You lead with authority instead of wisdom. You command obedience instead of trust. You demand admiration instead of risking love. And every day the gap between the man and the myth grows wider. Until the mask is no longer something you wear, it is something you are. There is a reason the stories of old kings and fallen empires all end the same way, not with a sudden collapse, but with a slow forgetting. A forgetting of purpose, a forgetting of humility, a forgetting of the fragile, sacred thing you were trying to protect when you first chose to lead. You thought the mask would shield you from the world's cruelty, but it only shielded you from your own humanity. And in losing that, you lost the only thing that could have saved you, because titles end, thrones crumble, crowns fall, but the soul you abandoned behind the mask, that loss, echoes forever. True leadership does not begin with conquest, it begins with surrender. It is easy to command others, easy to build systems, easy to forge legacies in stone and steel. But it is infinitely harder to govern the unruly kingdom within your own heart. It is harder to face the parts of yourself that ambition taught you to hide, the fear, the doubt, the hunger for validation. It is harder to admit that the empire you built was not just for others. It was for you. Carl Jung called it individuation. The painful, glorious process of integrating all the parts of yourself, even the ones you would rather keep buried. It is not a journey of achievement, it is a journey of honesty, a tearing down before a rebuilding, a death before a resurrection, because the shadow you fled from all these years was never your enemy. It was your doorway back home. There is a different kind of power that the world does not teach, a power that does not dominate, but liberates, a power that does not seek applause, but wholeness. It is the power of a man who no longer needs to perform, the power of a leader who no longer needs a crown to feel worthy, the power of a soul that has faced its own darkness and, instead of denying it, has moving it into wisdom. Lao Tzu wrote, "The best leader is the one whose presence is barely known, not because he hides, but because he has nothing left to prove. The true leader is invisible because he no longer needs to be seen. The true leader commands not through force, but through presence, because when a man has conquered himself, there is nothing left that can conquer him. The mask falls away. The crown is set down. And for the first time, you see not the ruler, not the image, not the myth, but the man, unafraid, undivided. And it is in that wholeness, not in the monuments or the myths, that true legacies are born, because history will not remember you for how high you climbed. It will remember you for the courage it took to come home to yourself. The throne was never out there. It was always inside you.